Commercial surrogacy is banned in China, but that doesn't mean that the Chinese aren't engaging in surrogacy. They are simply traveling to the country with the most permissive rent-a-womb laws, America. I'm Emma Waters, and it's time to start rethinking fertility. When parents prepare to welcome a child into the world, it is common to research where they want to give birth, be it at a hospital or a birth center. But imagine foreign nationals going even further and asking which country they want to conceive and give birth to a child in. Well, that's the very heart of the birth tourism debates in the United States. So in traditional birth tourism, foreign nationals come to the United States in their 8th month of pregnancy, either on a visa or illegally, so that they can give birth into the United States, have their child gain and maintain the full rights of U.S. citizenship, which means that they're leaving with a passport, a birth certificate, and a social security number before returning to their country of origin where they plan to raise their child. And that's been going on for decades now. But there is an emerging form of high-tech birth tourism that we're diving into today, because this form of high-tech birth tourism actually relies on our incredibly permissive commercial surrogacy laws to make it all possible. We have no federal laws governing international commercial surrogacy, literally zero, none. The FDA has some minor laws governing the transportation of human egg, sperm, and embryo across international lines, but that's it. The United States is an outlier in this regard. In fact, most nations outright ban international commercial surrogacy, including Australia, Brazil, Britain, Canada, China, Denmark, France, Germany, India, Italy, Nepal, New Zealand, Portugal, Spain, Thailand, and Taiwan. Nations have recognized the way that this rent-a-womb industry poses a serious threat to both national identity and child well-being. And yet the United States and war-torn Ukraine are fully in favor of it. So let's talk about China's use of international commercial surrogacy in particular. Before digging in, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel, hit like, and leave us a 5-star review. It goes a long way in getting this information to the people who need it, and we would really appreciate it. So as of 2016, China lifted their one-child policy, enabling Chinese nationals to have as many babies as they wanted. Now, for many Chinese nationals, what this meant is that they would have had a lot more kids during their childbearing years, but now they're older and can't have any more children. So some of those Chinese nationals are coming to the United States to have the kids that they were denied during their childbearing years. In other cases, we have reports of single Chinese men who are really struggling to find a partner who wants to have kids with them. So many Chinese women have bought hook, line, and sinker the girl boss feminism line that career is most important, and they're simply not interested in having babies. In January 2024, the Journal of Fertility and Sterility, which is the official research publication of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, found that in recent years, the number of cycles from foreign nationals with American surrogates has significantly increased, such that in 2019, there were over 3,000 commercial surrogacy cycles that happened in the United States, with the intended parents being foreign nationals. 42% are from China, and then from France, we have 9%, and Spain, 8%, as the next highest levels of foreign countries represented. And there's more. The purchasing parents were most likely to be Asian men over the age of 42, which is like the least maternal category you can imagine. And on top of that, they were far more likely to use pre-implantation genetic testing to choose the ideal child for them. And so this is already incredibly eugenic. Some of these Chinese men have had up to 100 children through commercial surrogacy because they're trying to build an empire of kids. Or in other cases, they're having lots of daughters through surrogacy so that they can marry them off to wealthy businessmen and really build their dynasty or political influence in the country. Turns out that about 75% of all of these contracts are taking place in California. It costs around $200,000 to $300,000 per child. So this is disproportionately bringing in wealthy Chinese nationals who have a lot of money to spend, and California is more than happy to give them a location to do it because it's a highly lucrative business. You'll find agencies that have Chinese caseworkers that are owned by former Chinese nationals. You'll see sometimes even completely separate websites just for Chinese clientele. And in a few cases, I found agencies that actually had bases listed in California and some surrogacy bases listed in China where it's supposedly illegal. And the mainstream media has been reporting on it for years. Sadly, many conservatives and lawmakers, though, are just starting to catch on to what kind of a massive threat this poses to American sovereignty. In an interview with NPR, one agency worker said, quote, "As long as you know what you want and you have the money, having children in the United States will always bring advantages." And what was the primary advantage they were talking about in this interview? U.S. citizenship. Because once a child turns 21, those parents can then apply for a green card. So then the parents could also be U.S. citizens. And in another interview with NPR, a Chinese national said that at the end of the day, that they thought that either the United States or China would come out on top as the global world leader. So they wanted their children to have citizenship in the United States, and they would have citizenship in China, and then they could choose which country they ultimately wanted to move to once they saw how the chips fell. So ultimately here, citizenship isn't anything to do with their identity or their patriotic commitment to a country, but it's simply a transaction, and they're using surrogacy to make it happen. And lest you think that I'm just making this up, in 2025, when President Trump announced his executive order on birthright citizenship, which would have made it much harder, if not impossible, for foreign nationals to gain citizenship through surrogacy, there were multiple surrogacy agencies and law firms who immediately released guidance on how they would help foreign nationals actually defy American law and get around this. It's completely unacceptable, especially when you think about the meaning of citizenship and how important it is that we are actually protecting our borders, including through international surrogacy. Now, as of this point, there is no proof that the CCP is actively encouraging citizens to get citizenship for their kids through international surrogacy. And in fact, in a few cases, it seems that China is actually very unhappy that their citizens are doing this because it signals weakness on the part of China. And yet, all of that being said, let's just take a breath and pause and think about this. The CCP will take any opportunity they can to attack and subvert the United States, whether that is pressuring individuals who have family members in the United States or in China to steal or share information in sensitive intelligence or research areas. Sometimes you see Chinese nationals who are buying farmland right beside military bases in the United States. And then there's the topic of what is the CCP's influence in the media or in Hollywood. So while we don't have any direct proof that the CCP is actually using this to their benefit, I think we should be incredibly wary and sober-minded that if they see that there's an opportunity to attack the United States, even indirectly, they're going to take it. And then the final point that I really want to hit home is the way that this international commercial surrogacy practice is threatening the well-being of children. Because we don't track any of the foreign nationals coming here or the children that are being produced from these surrogacy agreements, we have no idea what happens to these children. Anytime a law makes room for abuse, there are going to be bad actors who take advantage of it. And so we should be asking ourselves how many human traffickers, especially those in labor trafficking or sex trafficking, are using surrogacy in the United States to buy children that they then can take anywhere they want in the world and use for whatever purpose they want. And one of the best examples of this actually came to light in 2025 and 2026, and it's the story of the Arcadia mansion in California, where 21 surrogate-born children were found. Now, there was a Chinese couple, but it's unclear if they're married or not, who ran a surrogacy agency called Mark Surrogacy. Now, over the years, they had had many women come and work for them as surrogates birthing children. And the women who were working as surrogates thought that they were having babies for couples all across the United States who wanted to build their family. But it turns out that most of the babies the surrogates were having were actually just going to this one couple who owned the agency. Child Protective Services didn't find out about this until abuse was reported, where multiple toddlers there were being abused by the nannies who were watching them, including with pretty severe head injuries that weren't receiving the care they needed. When I said there's like 21, 22 children there, most of them were under the age of 5. So these kids were not being raised by two loving parents who just really wanted babies. They were being raised by nannies who in many cases were physically abusing them. What's so wild to me is the thing that was ultimately illegal, and rightly so, was the abuse of the children. The fact that these Chinese nationals living in the United States owned a surrogacy company and were hiring American surrogates under false pretenses to have over 21 children for them was perfectly legal based on the surrogacy laws in California. But there is a very positive note here. This story in particular has really gotten the attention of lawmakers in Washington, D.C. So in recent months, for example, Senator Rick Scott has led the charge on introducing the Safe Kids Act. This legislation would make it illegal for foreign nationals from adversarial nations, including Russia, North Korea, and most importantly, China, from buying babies through U.S. surrogates. This is starting to gain traction in both the House and the Senate, and I'm really optimistic to see where it goes. On top of this, you're also seeing lawmakers introduce things such as no sex offenders buying babies. One of those laws that you would think, shouldn't this already be the case? And yet it's not. And sadly, because of the crazy world we live in, we have to go so far as to articulate all of these things clearly to ensure that we're actually putting the best interests of children first. And to tie this in on a slightly more personal note, when I started working in policy back in 2022, I was doing a deep dive into IVF and surrogacy laws because I realized two things. The reality is that Fox News and US congressmen were never going to have me around saying, well, we should be careful about the way that surrogacy puts these children at risk. However, they would be more than happy to have a conversation about how Chinese nationals are buying babies from the United States and how this poses significant harms to our national security and to our understanding of U.S. citizenship. This niche topic is just one example of the way that reproductive technologies, if not stewarded well, have far-reaching consequences. And at the end of the day, it's the children who are being produced through these practices that ultimately pay the price. I'm Emma Waters. Join me next time as we continue rethinking fertility.
All sources are cited in the show notes found in the description of this episode.